Hey guys, my name's Jake, and today we're going to be reaching new heights. Well, drawing reaching new heights. Drawing new heights? Getting high? So earlier this month, Ten Hun put out this video. In it, he basically puts out an art challenge to create a piece along the theme of reaching new heights. Now, he lifts the interpretation, the media, everything like that up to the artist, so it's going to be pretty wide open and I think a lot of fun to do. Being a sucker for challenges and frankly, being a sucker for some Ten Hun art, I figured this is going to be the perfect thing to dive into. Really excited. Let's get to work. So my idea for this piece was to have 3 adventurers traveling through the forest, all kind of in different stages of their journey. They'd all be mounted on different animals, making their way through and out of the woods, and really just at different stages in what might be the same journey. I start out with like a 9x12 size, and then at the end of the sketching, you'll see me shrink it down more to an 8x12. I really wanted this whole thing to feel tall and have a lot more upward motion to it. So I use a lot of ways to do that with just the positioning of the elk here, using the background and some of the cut down trees in the background to almost be arrows directing the eye upward and to really give this sense of upward movement through the whole piece. I knew that I wanted it to shift from pretty heavily dark at the base to a much lighter color, really almost a bright white at the top of the piece. However, I didn't quite know the colors that I wanted to get there. I knew that I wanted to get a little creative with the colors, but wasn't quite sure what yet. So in order to kind of remedy that, I quickly painted in the background in grayscale, and that let me get an overall feel of the lighting in the scene, and then come back with a color gradient that I liked and just kind of overlay that on there, merge everything down, and have a decent background starting point to work with to begin getting the characters drawn in. So there's a lot of characters in this piece overall, but the 3 main characters are these 3 adventurers. And in order to really identify that these were the 3 characters that we were supposed to care about, I really wanted to push their design a lot more stylistically. The 3 animals that are kind of their guides or their rides are all done much more realistically. Despite the color, the overall setup is much more realistic. But I wanted to really stretch the design of the 3 adventurers so that they stood out in this piece. Once I had all 6 characters kind of basically positioned and colored how I liked it, it was time to clean up the background. I relied pretty heavily on my extensive Bob Ross video knowledge here to kind of shape this background properly, just starting in the way background and slowly bringing the background forward, a little darker, a little bit more detail to place all these trees in here until finally I'm fully in the foreground of the piece. No happy little bushes in this one, but the technique worked pretty well. As the piece is coming together here, I do want to talk a little bit about the overall idea that led me to make this piece. So buckle up and get ready for a little bit of symbolism. And to me, this piece really represents my journey with art and just kind of growth in general. I drew a ton as a kid, but fell out of it as I got into the real world in college and real job and all of that. and art kind of fell to the wayside. And this piece really as a whole represents that climb back into it, both in where I've come and the new heights that I want to reach within it. So within this piece, the frog is this very stagnant character, content to take his time riding very slowly along the forest floor. He's the only one with a full mat packed in his bag. He's ready to camp out and just kind of take it easy. He's along for the ride in a sense. And that is, to me, that kind of time where you may not be as motivated within the growth process. The ability's there, and you do have that ability to take that next step, but it's the time before you really pick your head up and decide to make a change against the direction that things are headed. For now, he's content riding along the forest floor in the same way that art and creativity was kind of set to the side as I got into the real world, and I was content to let it be what it was going to be. And that was a really secondary role in my life. That's what I wanted the frog to represent here. Something that almost definitely had the ability to get above where he was, but just kind of resolved to sit where he was and end up wherever this slow pace took him. But the story gets a little better. Over the last year or so, I've really recommitted myself to doing art and making something and try to doing it on a consistent basis and being more involved in trying to grow my skill set. And to me, that's the rabbit in this piece. He's climbed his way to a higher vantage point, a little quicker ride, and has this upward vision towards seeing what else is out there. He's looking around towards seeing how much higher he can get, how much more successful he can be towards this ultimate goal of trying to get out and get above where he's currently at. And to me, that's a really good representation of my present point. I want to continue growing this thing, explore some new ways of sharing my art. That was, a big part of the motivation of doing this YouTube channel was just that, of finding different ways to explore and share with people and just continue building this thing towards seeing what it could become. And that brings us to the mouse. The mouse to me represents a future goal. He is the one that has truly reached the highest of heights, has found the way out, and probably the unlikeliest of all the three adventurers to do so, but took a risk and found his way onto a hawk that would carry him up and out of the forest. To me, this is the kind of potential for future. It is the ultimate goal to reach new heights and to kind of become something that, despite the odds, is larger than what most would have thought. Overall, I think these three adventurers work really well in tandem as a past, present, and future, and also a overall growth over time. It takes the initiative to get up from the forest floor and to take a step up and look around, and then aspire to the heights that those around you may have achieved, and to continue climbing yourself. That's the overall feel of this piece, and that's why I chose to have the three adventurers represented in this way. Now, one last time, gotta touch up this background, added a ton of detail into these animals, so I kind of have to go back through and make the background match. To kind of continue along that conversation, some of the design choices that I made with the background, in addition to just the lighting scheme, I think there's a subtle one-point perspective to kind of tilt all of the trees in and upwards to draw that eye to the top center. Obviously, the chewed up trees at the bottom really help to do that. again, and then just with the angle of that front log that's broken along with the trees on the edge, really everything in this piece was done compositionally to draw your eye up towards top dead center. I really wanted this piece to flow when you were looking at the whole thing from almost that bottom left corner of the frog, and that's why he's a little bit brighter than some of the other characters, and to travel up the elk and then obviously follow the elk's line of sight up to the mouse, kind of telling the story along the way. Then the last thing we got to do here is to really pull everything together and wrap it all in the scene. So you're going to come through, add some really dramatic lighting with those God rays coming from the top, bump up the shadows and highlights, add a little rim lighting to all these characters, deepen some shadows to really make them sit in the scene. And then we're going to go in and add a couple little details just to finish it all off before we take a look at the final thing. All right, that took way longer than I'd care to admit, but it turned out really cool, super excited. It was a lot of fun to do and got to break out of my comfort zone a bit. So just overall, really happy with how the piece turned out. If you like the piece or you like the video, be sure to drop a like or leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. If on the off chance that you made it over here after seeing this image on Ten Hun's video, then by all means, please consider subscribing. I do a lot of cool art with some different, across a lot of different mediums, and always looking to kind of explore and grow and just share my stuff with new people. So if you saw that and liked it enough to come over here and watch this whole thing, please consider subscribing and ring the bell if you want to get notified as soon as the next video comes out. I am going to try to put prints of this piece available, but I want to do something a little different where I hand sign all these pieces. So they're not available yet on my website, but they will be, and I'll be sure to announce that in a future video when I've got all that figured out. But until then, stay tuned. Inktober's coming up next. That's going to be a bear, but also going to be a lot of fun. But until then, I'll see you next time.